Our special guest today is Jacy Morris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jacy.
So let's see. I'm a horror writer. I've been writing. I was looking back at my dates just today. I guess I published my first novel in 2015 under a pseudonym, and then I'm now up to 21 books. A lot of them are. I have a zombie series that's eight books long now. Another series that's kind of dark satirical, like comedic dark horror. It's just weird. That's up to 4 books, and I'm always writing. So I work a lot faster than a lot of other writers. I have a ton of stuff out there now. So
fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your books without giving out any spoilers.
Okay. So I have 2 main series. My first main series is called This Rotten World. And it was born out of sort of my frustration with the zombie genre in general, both books and movies, where they would, just cut to a full-on zombie apocalypse. Like maybe you get a little scene here or there. And, the thing that was interesting to me was the downfall of society, right? Like that's like the best to me. Those are my favorite parts of zombie fiction. And no one ever did it right. No one ever satisfied me. So like out of spite, I wrote this zombie series, and people have really enjoyed it. And it's kind of, it's taken off. It's definitely my most popular series, and people seem to love it, or some people hate it because it's not, it's realistic. There's no real heroes in that series. I've had people complain that, I'll kill anyone off. I don't hold them high up so that they're not, untouchable. That's the thing that always bugged me about zombie series in general, was you're stuck in this one character or maybe a handful of characters, and they're all basically untouchable. I have no untouchables in that series. So there's that one. And then the other one's called One Night Stand at the End of the World. And it's sort of this dark satirical take on an apocalyptic wasteland. And there's a comedian that travels around, and that's the way he makes his living. He goes from settlement to settlement as a comedian, and he's just damaged and broken and dark. And along the way, he kind of gathers sort of these followers, and his show builds, and he keeps going to stranger and stranger places. And that's a weird one because it has so much humor in it. And humor is such a bizarre thing because not everyone has the same type of humor. Like not everyone's going to laugh at what I think is funny. I'm not going to laugh at what everyone else thinks is funny. So it's kind of, the people that love it, love it. The people that don't like it really don't like it. And I'm okay with that. It's sort of the evolution of me as a writer, where I'm going from what are these acceptable things to actually doing artistic work that I don't really care about who likes it or not.
I think that's that's the same though, isn't it?
Say that
sort
again.
Of like, I think that's the same with like all authors. You'll get a lot of people that will like their books, and then you'll get a lot of people that won't. It's just different tastes.
Yeah. I mean, there's different tastes. I think that's important to realize as an artist, is that if you're sitting there trying to please everyone, you're not really an artist. You're making, comic books or popular stuff. And I don't think there's room for real meaning or change when you're pandering to the largest possible swath possible.
Yeah. So what inspired you to writing? Sorry, carry on.
What inspired me to write?
Yeah.
I've always been a creator. I in my head, I have all these ideas, and it usually comes from the frustration with the world around me, where it's I see things that make me unhappy or see things that need to be changed. And there's literally nothing you can do about it. You can cast your vote and it doesn't make a lick of difference. It's just people in power with their money making the decisions. Doesn't matter who you vote for. They put up who they want you to choose anyways. And so it's really just a scream in the night about how I'm frustrated with this world and things need to change. And the only way I know how to do that is through writing. It's through the stories that I write. It's through connecting with fans. It's through connecting with other people by words. It's all I got, right? I have no power. I'm no one. Yeah. And I think it's important to get voices out there. Get people thinking, even if you have to do it through the guise of a zombie story or do it through the guise of there's this apocalyptic world. It's important to get people thinking. And that's kind of what I go for as a writer.
Yeah. So how do you come up with the dark settings in your stories? I know you've said that you sort of like base your ideas on what's going on around you and how you're feeling at the time. But how do you actually build on to that?
I'm always aware. Whenever I'm walking around, I'm thinking of stories like, what's the next thing I'm going to write? Because in addition to those series, I write standalone novels as well, and I'm always looking for the next idea. For instance, this last summer, I went up to a vacation at the beach. It's called Long Beach in Washington, and I just walk around. And, it's me and my wife walking around and we're just looking at things and I'm hanging out with her and we're having a good time. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, what if this happened? What if this scenario happened? Like we were sitting on a bench, like staring out at the ocean. And I was like, man, that would really suck if a tsunami came along right now. And then I wrote a story for that. And that's going to be published in April, I think. But yeah, it's the world around me inspires me. I think it's very important to get out into the world and take it in. And my mind is just, I feel like I'm an anxious person. I'm always, worst case scenario type person. Like I'll go into a restaurant and I always want to be sitting facing outwards, so I can see who's coming in, who's going on, because it's a weird world when you actually think about it. So everywhere I go, I'm thinking up stories. Anytime I go to like a place that's outside of my state or like a travel, I start thinking about, well, how would this place work with the zombie apocalypse? Where would you go? What would you do? What are the ways to get out of this place? It's a weird mindset that I have. Not everyone has that, but it also inspires a lot of innovation and creation. And I think traveling is a big part of that. I'd love to travel more and come up with more crazy ideas, because that's the way I do it. I also get a lot from dreams. I have a lot of very dark, vivid dreams. I had one the other day. Well, not the other day. I think it was end of September. I had one, and I was just in this Arctic sort of village, and I was visiting and documenting the place. And me and my crew were hanging out in a room, and one of the tribesmen kind of burst in and sprayed us with oil, and I got lit on fire in this dream. And I woke up just like covered in sweat and like panicked. And I was like, well, holy crap. That would make a great story. So that's what I'm working on
now. So you got to love it when authors like have bad dreams and then they start writing about it. They make for good books.
Oh yeah, it was a very traumatizing dream. Yeah.
So what's the most challenging aspect of writing for you?
For me, the most challenging aspect is authenticity. I feel like it's taken a long time to find my voice. The initial things I wrote literally were out of spite. Like I was annoyed by things. I was annoyed by how they were doing, zombie stuff. I was annoyed by how they were doing vampire stuff. I wrote one vampire novel back in the day where I was like, I published it and then I unpublished it because it just wasn't good. Like my friends liked it, but nothing really happened with it. And then I started, that inward journey where you start looking at yourself and what do you actually have to say? What are you trying to do with this? As opposed to just, I'm going to put some bloody stuff on the page.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part for, I think, a lot of writers to do. And it comes with age, it comes with maturity, it comes with practice. Finding out who you are and what you want to say is key. I mean, most people that get into horror seem like they just want to entertain or scare people. That's not what I'm here for. Like, I love horror, but I really only love horror when it's saying something, it has something to actually teach me, something I can learn from. Not to say I can't enjoy like a Saw movie or something, but it doesn't stick with me. It doesn't mean anything to me.
So do you ever scare yourself with anything that you write?
I do not get scared by movies or books. It's not something that happens to me. I've never read a book that's scared me. I've read books where I've had like emotional reactions to them, and I'm more into that emotional reaction because I find that profound, to be able to move someone to tears with writing. Like, that's amazing. Scaring someone, I can do that, right? That's not gonna, it doesn't mean anything to me that I scared you. Nothing that I write personally scares myself, but there've been a few times where I've written something and I found myself getting emotional over it because I've developed these characters. I've made them so real, almost human, that when things happen to them or they're gone or they're killed off, it's like losing a real person, That's the part that interests me. So as far as being scared by things, that's I've had enough real life scary things happen to me that books aren't going to do it for me. Horror movies aren't going to do it for me. There's a disconnect there. So, yeah.
Okay, so what authors have inspired your work?
Authors that inspired my work. Most of my authors that inspired my work were when I was younger. I don't do a ton of reading now because I like to stay free and true to who I've become as a writer. My younger self loved Clive Barker. I loved the Books of Blood. I read his other works. His novels didn't necessarily do it for me. I feel like as a child, I was just I don't feel like I grasped them completely. The levels that are going on there, the themes that are going on there. But the descriptions, the Books of Blood stories are fantastic. They're like, a master class in how to write a short story. I love those. I, of course, read Stephen King. The Stand is still one of my favorites. The Gunslinger that's probably right up there with The Stand as far as my favorites. Richard Matheson's I Am Legend is it's so short but so powerful, and the end of that story is just amazing. That's the one that always sticks with me. If I could make something like that, I would be happy. I would be super pleased with my whole career. That's kind of the goal. So those are my three influences from when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I keep looking for innovation in horror. And so I'm always willing to try out new writers. I really like what Stephen Graham Jones is doing. His series, what is it called? I'm reading Don't Fear the Reaper now, but I can't remember My Heart is a Chainsaw. I can't remember what the first one is, but Stephen Graham Jones is amazing. His style is so unique, so him. I read this book by Danger Slater the other day called House of Rot, and that was fantastic. It was something I'd never seen before. It's a very visceral style, but familiar in an accessible way, which I was really into that. Gabino Iglesias's The Devil Takes Me Home, The Devil Takes You Home. I'm terrible with titles, by the way. I can't remember a damn title for mine. Like, I read these books and I'm like, I have a vague idea of what I just read and the name of it, and then it just goes out in my head and I'm like, that one book by so and so. But those are fantastic. I love those. I love the new generation of horror that's coming up, mostly because I'm an Indigenous author, and I never read a horror book not about white people the whole time I was growing up. It just never happened. I never found one. No one was putting those in my hands. And now the diversity of this next generation of horror writers is awesome. It's fantastic. It's giving me things to connect to, things to relate to, things to be inspired by. Whereas back in the day, it was just like these, this handful of writers that were all basically the same background wise. Maybe they were born in different countries, maybe different social classes, but they're the same background. And I never really connected to those. I just kind of admired the ideas and the writing styles.
Yeah, I think self-publishing has a lot to do with that, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, it does. It does in good ways, it does in bad ways, right? Like the ones that I'm talking to, the ones I'm inspired by are not necessarily as self-publishers. They're kind of the fact that the door has been opened is what I'm into. And, I respect the traditional publishing process because it's a filter. Is it a fair filter? Not all the time, but it allows kind of the cream to rise to the top, where as before, back in the day, it didn't necessarily. It was just people looking for things that they connected to or things they felt familiar with versus saying, hey, there's a market for this. There's a market for diversity. There's a market for all stories here.
Yeah.
But self-publishing is amazing. It's been super helpful for me, but I'm in the, I'm a hybrid now, right? I started with self-publishing and now I'm doing traditional publishing, and it's a vastly different world, but I wouldn't be able to be published traditionally if it wasn't for the work I did as a self-publisher, if it wasn't for my fans saying, hey, loved your book, loved your story, loved your ideas. These things needed to be fixed, right? What did you think about this? Why did you do this? And if I had an answer, great. If I didn't have an answer, that's something I knew to work on. I never would have been able to be traditionally published if it wasn't for the self-publishing model. And I think that's really the way to go. If you're going to be a writer, excuse me, if you're going to be a writer, self-publishing is awesome because you can just do whatever the heck you want to and put it out there. But if you don't grow from that, you're really missing out. If you're just doing it because you don't want to bow down to anyone, you're really missing out. There's so much potential, and the reach as a self-publisher it's just never going to be what being a traditional published author is. So for me, that was the goal I wanted to do. The self-publishing is fantastic. I can do whatever I want, but I also want to reach as many people as possible. And the best way to do that is through traditional publishing.
Yeah. So how has the horror genre evolved over the years, in your opinion?
The horror genre has evolved. I mean, it's definitely becoming more mainstream and acceptable, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I was, kind of looked at as a little bit of weird because I would always have like a horror book or I'd have a horror movie. Like I go to a sleepover and everyone's like, oh, weird. We're going to watch this weird horror movie. But now that's not so weird anymore, right? You're not a niche fan. You're part of the mainstream now. And I think that has, as with most things, that has a good side and a bad side to it.
Yeah.
And the good side is there's more money out there for you if you want to be into it. Bad side is there's a flood of just crap. And there's a lot of not good stuff out there that is flooding the market. It's making it harder for the quality self-published authors to be successful. And then you have the rise of AI on top of that, and that's flooding the market even more. I just really, I worry about the self-publishing form of it. The evolution I see is that there's going to be blowback on that down the road, and it's going to really strip out the creativity and the awesome growth of the self-published author. So that's where and it's going to go back to being sort of that traditional thing, because you can't really trust what's out there. You know, you've got a fan out there ready and willing to spend, you know, $3 or $4 on an ebook, and you get a piece of AI crap that someone just threw up that had a cool cover because it was an AI cover that they just threw up, and they're not going to want to come back. You know, they're not going to want to come back, and they're going to want to go to, you know, the more mainstream traditional things. Stephen King, Clive Barker, those big time authors are trading on familiarity and trustworthiness, right? They may write a book and it's kind of garbage, but people are like, I know what I'm getting, right? I'm not taking a risk on that. I'm not spending my hard-earned money that, you know, I went and worked for 40 hours a week on something that's, you know, just gone into the ether, right? So I think that's the sad state of it, because I love the self-publishing. There's some fantastic self-published authors I've read, and I'm just heartbroken by the rise of that AI, because it's taking away the middle class of writers, right? The people that aren't getting rich. It's taking away those people that are surviving on their writing, and unfortunately, I think that's going to, you know, tighten things up a bit and make it even harder.
Yeah. So do you have any memorable reactions from readers that stand out to you?
I get a ton of memorable reactions for mine. My This Rotten World series is when I first started writing it is when Game of Thrones came out, and I got to the end of that first season. I don't want to spoil it for the two people that haven't seen Game of Thrones, but at the end of the first season, a pretty major character dies, and it just blew my mind. I was like, no way, you can't just, this guy's coming back. There's just no way. And then it happened, and I was in the middle of writing the second book of that series, I believe. And I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. And so I started, you know, I just removed all love for my characters in that series. And, you know, I don't just kill them randomly. It has to happen in an organic way. But when that opportunity comes up, you know, I have to sit there and I have to go, is this the time, or am I saving this person against what would really happen? You know, if this was reality, would this person survive or not? And if the answer is no, they wouldn't survive, they're gone, unfortunately, which is really hard decisions sometimes. But that also leads to some pretty major reactions from my fans, especially my fans of This Rotten World. I'm always having to like cut spoilers off my Facebook page where people are like, holy crap, you killed off so and so. Why did you do that? And I'm like, that's what it is, you know. So like, a few people don't finish a series because it's too hard on them. They want that familiarity. They want that cozy zombie thing where they're like, oh, these are my characters. They're going to survive forever. And I'm not here for that. I get a lot of reactions like that. I've also had reactions that are, you know, a little more touching, I would suppose. Most of my reactions are, I can't believe you killed off so-and-so. But I've had a few where people have really connected to some of the characters. And I remember one lady had emailed me and just thanked me for creating a certain character in one of the stories because it reminded her of her daughter who had passed away.
Yeah.
And that was really touching. I was just like, wow, you're reading this thing I wrote and you're connecting to it on a level that I just never foresaw for like a zombie series. Like, you don't expect people to connect to, you know, basically people walking around and trying to survive. But that's one of the gifts of what I can do as a writer is I can make even these characters, even the bit characters, I can make them feel real. And I'm pretty sure that's the strength of my writing. That's why people like my writing. Yeah, the chaos, the gore, the deaths. But if you don't have the characters, they're not going to care about any of that. So I'm really proud of that. And those reactions, I love my fans' reactions. They're fantastic. I don't know if I would still be writing or even keep going on if it wasn't for the support I get from my fans. Because it's not, you know, I'm not getting rich over here doing this stuff. It's, you know, it's some pocket change here and there. But
Yeah.
if it wasn't for fans, I wouldn't keep going. Oh, no, I guess I would. I can't actually stop writing, but I might take a little pause every now and then, right?
Yeah. So have you got any upcoming projects or releases that you're excited about?
Oh boy, I've got so many. I write so much, it's ridiculous. It's bordering on obsession at this point. I'm about to drop a Halloween horror novel. I'm hoping. I talked to my cover guy, and he's usually like booked out a couple months. So I was like, "Hey, can you get me a cover for this thing? I'm tired of shopping it. I'm impatient, and I just want to drop it for my fans." So I'm hoping to get that out by Halloween, and it's called 1,000 Pieces of Sweet, and it's about this group of kids that they go trick or treating in like 1987, which was a Saturday Halloween, which is the best Halloween you could do. And there's 6 of them, and only 3 of them come back, and then they're trying to recover from that as adults. So it's kind of a two-part book, but it's a cool story. It's got some cool imagery, cool just Halloween autumn themed horror fun, right? I've also got part 5 of One Night Stand at the End of the World. It's called One Night Stand in the Box, and that's in edits now. So I'm probably going to push that out. Hopefully, when I get my edits back, I'll probably push that out in November. I finished part 8 of This Rotten World just a couple weeks ago. People are, chomping at the bit for that one. Every time I post something on my Facebook page, people are all, "Yeah, that's great. I like that. When's the next This Rotten World coming out?" So I got to do edits on that one, and then that's probably my December book. I just signed a contract for a book to come out in 2025. It's sort of indigenous cosmic horror, which is it's just an interesting book. It's its own thing. I'm excited to see how people react to that one. That again is a traditional published book. I haven't gotten the okay yet to say anything about it, so I can't even say the name or whatever. But 2025, if something comes out, that's what I'm talking about. And then,
That's good.
Yeah. And then what else is on? I've got a short story being published in an anthology in April. It's called The Bench. It's sort of that story I was talking about earlier, how we went to the coast and I was looking out at the ocean, and this story just dawned on my mind, and that'll be in the off season. Coastal Weird Horror is the anthology. I'm excited for people to check that one out. I've never done an anthology. I never really did short stories. I just decided to do that. This summer I kind of went halftime because I'm making enough money off selling books. I'm a teacher, and I decided to go halftime because teaching is really hard and it chews up so much of your life and your soul. And I was making enough to go halftime, and I decided, well, I'm losing a lot of money here. I'm going to try my hand at short stories. And I got one in there, and I think I'm done with short stories. I'm going to stick to novels. It's just not satisfying to me to kind of be given a prompt and write what someone else wants, basically. It feels like doing a homework assignment every time I wrote a short story for a submission. So I think I'm going to just stick to novels. So, I got a lot of stuff. What's that?
Some people don't like doing short stories, do they? They just prefer to do the longer story rather than a short one.
Yeah, I mean, I love world building. I love character building. The short story basically robs me of that. I can do a lot with a little, but I don't necessarily like doing a lot with a little.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to aspiring horror writers?
My advice to aspiring horror writers is to always be getting better, right? You're never there. Even the greats look at their stuff. They look at their early stuff and they go, well, that's really not very good compared to where I am now. Understand that, writing is a process. It's about growth. It's about growing as a person, growing as a writer. And you can't really do both you can't really do one without the other. So keep looking for ways to make your writing better. Keep looking for people that can help you make your writing better. I've been doing a little bit of writing coaching recently with some writers, and it's just, get your eyes in front of someone that knows what they're doing, that's been there, that has the experience. Get your work in front of those people and really listen to what they have to say, because I'm telling you, there's so many self-published authors that could just do one or two things and it would just make the world a difference to their writing. Just simple things like, getting rid of junk words, or trying to make your writing a little more active versus passive. There's just so many little things, little tricks that can be done. And, it's not necessarily about the stories. Most people that write in the self-publishing realm have fantastic stories. They have really great ideas, but it's the execution that makes the difference. So keep growing, keep learning, keep communicating with other writers, find your group, find your people that can help you and give you honest feedback. I mean, that's been the hardest thing for me as a writer, is that no one really gave me honest feedback, right? I had family and friends that are like, they're fantastic and they're supportive, but they're not like, you know what, you could have pumped that up there, or this is a little self-aggrandizing here, right? It's just you pleasing yourself, just the audience. But you got to have those people. You got to have that tough love to be able to achieve your best writing self. Find the people that will give you the tough love, and your writing will grow because of it. And that's kind of what happened to me. Finding that tough love and appreciating it, like respecting those opinions. You don't got to agree with them all, but you at least got to listen and hear people out,
Yeah. You said you liked developing characters. So what's your approach to character development?
My approach to character development is something that I don't recommend to other writers. I literally discover my characters as I go. Like I'll be writing and a little bit of personality will leak in there, and I treat that kind of like as an opening. And then I probe around that opening and I dive deeper and push deeper until I find the nugget of who a person is. And that's very esoteric, and that's not going to be helpful to any like actual writers out there. I don't think, but that's my approach. I think that's why I'm so good at it. Is like, I don't go in with preconceived notions of who these characters are. I might have one or two descriptors on them, and then I'm not going to beat it over the head. I don't decide what their personality is. I don't decide, how they react in any particular situation. I let the character unfurl on the page. And that's what I do. That's not good advice. Don't take that if you're a writer, or try it and see if it works for you. I don't know. Maybe it works for everyone, but no one else is doing it. So yeah, I'm not very helpful on that part. If I was doing some writing coaching with you, I would give you techniques to do it that are probably a little more effective than that. But as far as my process, like I love innovation. I love that light bulb over the head moment where I discover who a character is. I feel like that's just, it's like a drug to me when I'm like, oh, I have a handle on this person. I know who they are. And then the rough draft, I'll play that out. And then when I go back and revise, that's when I kind of shore everything up. I'm like, well, let's make sure this is consistent from the beginning, because you didn't even know who this person was when you started writing the story.
So how do you decide on the pacing of like the scares and twists? Are you a plotter or is it pantser? Is that the right technical term?
Pantser, yeah. I am a full-on pantser. Like I said, I love that feeling of innovation. I generally, before I write a story, I've maybe written one story where I planned it out and I hated it. I was like, this is boring. I know everything that's going to happen. It's so boring. And so my typical process is I will get an idea for a story. Like I'll wake up, screaming in my bed because I've just been burned alive in a dream. And I'll wake up with that idea, and then I let it rattle around in my head for about a good month. And I think of two things I have to have before I write a story. I think of the ending. Where's it going to go? And I think of the beginning. How are you going to get people into this journey? And I really focus on those two bits. And once I have those two bits settled, I'm ready to write that thing. So an idea might kick around in my head for a good 30 days before I sit down and start, cracking keys on that story. Because I think it's so important to have the ending figured out for me. I've read so many books where I'm like, oh, that ending sucked. That was awful. Why did you do that? And it ruins the journey. If you don't get the ending, you're ruining a book, right? So the ending's got to be fantastic. It's got to be top notch. So I don't write anything until I get that ending figured out of that book.
Fantastic. So are there any particular sorry, I do apologize. Are there any particular subgenres that you would never entertain writing in horror?
Yes. I don't do sexual assaults in my stories. I don't get it. I don't get why people would. It's such a triggering thing for people. So a rape revenge story that's never just going to be my deal. I'm not into that. I don't like reading them. I don't, you can always do that theme of empowerment through revenge, but in the end, it just feels tawdry and cheap. Like you just wanted to get your jollies off writing some really gross stuff. I don't do that. Let me see. Vampire stuff, I kind of hate. I like comedic vampire. I really enjoy What We Do in the Shadows as a show, but unless I went that route, which has already been done, I would never touch a vampire story. Let's see. I don't really care for ghost stories. I've done a couple ghost stories, but they're kind of like my own way. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to ideas. If I get an idea and I got the end and the beginning and it sounds like it's going to be, a good roller coaster ride and I'm actually trying to say something with it, I'll do it. But I'm less drawn to those. I'm drawn to sort of unique ideas, unique situations, unique premises. I'm not necessarily a subgenre person. Like I write within all subgenres, I suppose. There's just those ones I'm not going to touch. Yeah.
That's good. Well, it's been lovely speaking to you, Jacy. Wish you the best of luck with your releases. Sounds like you've got a
Excellent. Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Busy year. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just, I just want to say that, if you're a writer and you're looking for some help and you want one-on-one contact, you want someone to, really guide you through the process of growing from maybe a self-published author to a traditionally published author, I am offering writing coaching, which is, as a teacher, I love teaching. And I love especially teaching writing. And I love especially teaching that with people that are self-motivated and looking to be the best person they can be. My website is wordstitchwritingcoach.com. And my rates are, pretty cheap because, when you're starting out as a writer, you're not making any money. You're probably working, a minimum wage job or something, maybe a cut above. But, it's so great to get someone else to look at your stuff. So please reach out to me if you want to do that. I love working with other writers. I think it's important to give back. Once you get to the top of the ladder, you got to stand up and you got to look back and help other people up. That's super key for me. I'm very focused on community and working with others. So look me up. I'd love to work with you.
Well, thank you for being on the show, Jacy. It's been wonderful.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome.